Dan Donachie, what an absolute pleasure. I've been looking forward to this day for a long time, and here you are. How are you?
So have I. I've been looking forward to it. Like, I think you had bigger guests than me, didn't you? So it was like at the end of the list, I can come and then...
You know, bigger means nothing to me. Bigger is irrelevant. You're putting someone on a pedestal. No,
Yes.
we have resonated and connected on a phone call, and I love the message and the energy underneath your work. I think it's so beautiful to connect what you're pointing at with sport and actually beyond sport now. But yes, no, so I'm thrilled to have you here, Dan. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And I want to start with a bang.
Good.
Let's go to Amsterdam. So
Okay.
I'll just set the scene briefly and then you can take over. So thousands of hours worth of meditation, and we can dive back into the intricacies and the hows and the whats later, but thousands of hours of meditation under your belt. And there you were, and a rather profound experience happened. So do you want to pick it up from there?
So not only thousands of hours of meditation, thousands of hours of practical presence in day-to-day life.
Right. Being mindful.
Yes. So, we'll speak more about that. But anyway, let's get back to Amsterdam. So, as I often used to do, occasionally still do, I looked online for what crazy course I could go to next. And there was this thing in Amsterdam called circling. I thought, that looks quite interesting. So I knew nothing about it. Turn up in Amsterdam, get to this building. It was like on the 5th floor of this amazing building, very cool, in Amsterdam. I walk in and there was probably about 40 people there. And I walk in and like circling, I didn't know at the time, a big part of it is eye contact. So I walked in and the 40 people like giving me very direct eye contact. And I'm like, oh my God, what is this? What have I done here? And I think it was a 4-day course, 3 or 4 days. So I managed to stay for the first day. Second day, I was like, I'm not sure this is for me, because basically what it is, you're in a big group of like a big circle, and it's just present moment awareness, but with a lot of eye contact, which is a bit strange. And then you're in small groups, and then you do it one-on-one like this. And what you're supposed to do is sit and just notice what you're experiencing in the moment, and then tell the other person, and then they see what happens to them and they tell you. So did it all, end of the weekend. So basically building up presence awareness over the weekend. And it gets to like the last half day, and I'm sat opposite this guy, and you're supposed to do this practice where you tell them, and I knew instantly there was something different about this moment. And like, I forget the first bit, but I think I got a smile on my face, and I just said to him, do you mind if we don't speak? And he said, yeah, no problem. And then I got a very strong vibration in my hands and feet, like very strong. And I just sat with it, and eventually it kind of went up my arms, went up my legs, and then went into the bottom of my spine. And then I felt like something pulled my head back like that. My head went like that. And then this energy, whatever it was, came all the way up here and then kind of came out of here. And I just felt complete bliss, joy, crying, laughing, smiling. I do not know what the guy was thinking. But after it, he said it was an amazing experience for him. I don't know why that happened in that moment or how. But ever since that moment, so I had meditated for many years, like you say, but ever since that moment, it's been different, like totally changed. And the energy, the quality of that energy isn't like it was in that moment, but ever since that moment, there's been an awareness of energetic presence. And yeah, very grateful.
How would you describe that energetic presence? Loving awareness, loving presence? Don't want to put words in your mouth, but...
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to kind of describe it. However, it just gives like a very sort of underlying feeling of peace that's constantly there, always there. And when I close my eyes, you connect with it more deeply, and you go into a deeper peace.
And I was speaking to you about this before we came in, and I got you to shut your eyes, right? And when you shut your eyes, you go straight there. pretty much.
Yeah.
And I could feel it. It was palpable.
Yeah, I like it can happen anywhere. I can be in like Euston Station and do it, and there's I don't know how it happened or why, but I'm very grateful for it, and it's actually a big part of the work that I do now. I feel like whatever the energy is, it is a big part of the work, and I don't understand it, but it does the work.
Interesting you say you don't understand it, because it is the peace that passes all understanding, right?
Yes.
That's the thing. It's not about big conceptualizing or anything like that.
Yes.
And so that is an awakening experience. Some could say it's a Kundalini experience. The word that comes to mind for me is a jhana experience, because I've spoken to someone else I know, as you know, who did meditation very similar to you, had no idea what was happening with these jhana experiences. Marriage broke down, left America, eventually found someone in the Buddhist tradition who was able to explain it to him, but can be very destabilizing. So I know you can't really anticipate what it's going to be like. Was it destabilizing in any way?
No, it was the opposite. I've been lucky. Like, I feel like because like we'll speak more about my dad and, you know, the impact he had on me. I think all of those years of practice, of presence, I feel like it kind of created some sort of stable container. And yeah, it wasn't destabilizing at all.
Beautiful. Okay, we'll come back to that. I just wanted to do a little taster and we can dive back into that. But yeah, let's go back and let's join the dots. So you mentioned your dad, Willie. And first of all, a fellow Scot like my dad.
Really?
It is, yeah.
Where's he from?
Mine's from Edinburgh, the posh
part.
Oh, yeah. I know, it doesn't really count.
Enemies.
But so we got those Scottish roots, and obviously he was way ahead of his time, right? And I was doing a bit of research and I found it interesting. He started asking the big questions himself on account of the suffering that he experienced, because his mother, your grandmother, died quite young.
Yeah, it wasn't only that though. So she died when he was 12, and his dad came back from the war, and obviously his wife died young, and he was an alcoholic. He lived in one bed, in one room with 4 sisters, 1 brother, 3 or 4 sisters, I'm not sure. So it was a real challenging upbringing. And then it's interesting because we were speaking about ayahuasca earlier. When he was 16, he had an LSD experience.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. And I actually
think... That would change you, yeah.
Yeah. So he said that he experienced the universe in that experience, and he lost all sense of self. And so the suffering was there, and then also this experience. Yeah. And then when he was a young footballer, he said that there would be moments where he'd be running with the team or running on the pitch, and he'd lose this sense of self, and he'd open up to something else. Yeah. Beautiful.
Just to give a bit of context to that ayahuasca experience. So that was my experience. Because you were in Amsterdam, I was also in the Netherlands, albeit in a farm in the middle of nowhere. And it absolutely battered me around, and maybe we'll touch on some aspects of that, but I will just say I experienced that sense of full melting into the totality of reality, and then woke up a few hours later, rocking on a chair, just saying, it's so big, it's so big, it's so and I think, as you say, if you put suffering with a spiritual experience like that, or more profoundly one that you had because it was so intentional, then it changes you. You can't completely lose touch with that. I haven't been able to, and clearly, like with your experience, it's completely changed it, and with your dad as well, right?
Yeah.
Set him off on that tangent. He was ahead of his time, though.
Yeah.
And what I love is that he was asking the big questions of you from such a young age. So he got you to do self-inquiry when you were 6, right? Like, and just quickly, so self-inquiry for context, just questioning what we mean when we say I.
Yeah.
So just
he's a bit mad, my dad.
Oh, so, no, I do.
So I was 6, but my sister was 4.
Wow.
And I just remember we'd sit there, we'd be like on the piano stool, and he'd say, "Right, come and But before I say that, he used to meditate twice a day, every day, his whole life.
Which was that mantra?
Transcendental,
right, mantra.
Yeah. So he did that since he was 19, I think.
Right.
And at the time, he was playing in the Premier League, for Man City. like pretty amazing.
Yeah. So I heard he used to like be reading Dostoevsky on the bus and stuff.
And he'd give me books as well when I was young. Like, I think I read some pretty full-on books when I was very young.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's such a gift.
I've never got around to Dostoevsky, but yeah.
No, I've not. But I was more interested in like The Way of the Peaceful Warrior and stuff like that. Like he just captured my imagination with that book and those books in that time, because probably partly because of my dad, but partly because of who I am. All I was interested in when I was young was enlightenment.
Yeah. So just take us back to the self-inquiry. What he said to you?
I was going to get there, don't worry. So we'd be sat on the piano bench and I'd be sat here, my sister would be sat there, and he'd say, right, close your eyes. And he'd just bring you into your body, so into the present moment. And as a kid, it's difficult to do because your mind's like a jumping frog. But then he'd say, right, open your eyes. And he'd say, what did you experience? And I'd be like, I don't know. And then he'd say, right, who are you? Who are you? And I would say, I'd kind of look, I can remember like as if it was yesterday, I'd look at my hand and say, this is who I am. You can see it here. I'm the body. This is me. You can see it, like this is me. And he'd go, but if you can see it, then it can't be you, because there must be an observer. And at that time I was like, what are you on about? So then he'd go, if you're not the body, what are you? So I'd think about, and I'd say, well, I'm the thoughts that come into my mind, like the ideas of who I think I am. And he'd go, well, if you can observe those thoughts, you can't be them. And that was like 20 years later, I got it, but not at that time.
It's funny. I mean, that's a question I ask a lot. We've obviously got Will, the cameraman, here. And as I said, I'm delighted he's here. And it's something I've run through with Will, with other people. It's a question I really quite enjoy asking adults. And no one thinks about it. No, if you ask them, what do you mean when you say I? No, everyone has, whether it's the body or my memory, whatever it is. But you can obviously dissemble that. But no one's particularly interested. And then when I heard that your dad did that with you when you were 6, I tried it with my eldest, who's 9. She walked off. I was like, no. Try me when I'm older. That was last night. But I mean, it's profound. You drop that seed and it obviously, really started to bloom later for you. But you said you were really interested in enlightenment from a very early age. So you went to a Buddhist temple when you were 15 odd?
I think, well, I think it was, about 16. I didn't go to the temple then. There was a young Buddhist monk who would come and do talks, and I used to go and see him. And then the temple was when I was about 19, I think. Yeah, when I was playing football.
Right, okay. We'll come to football. But so when you went to see whether the Buddhist chapel or the temple, and they got you to meditate on the tip of your nose?
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, so he would say, right, just, I can't remember if it was eyes kind of, I think it was eyes kind of slightly open, but it might have been closed. But he said, just put your attention on the tip of the nose and feel the breath as it comes in, as it goes out. I don't know, for 15 minutes or so. And I was absolutely useless. Like, I could not stay there for a fraction of a second. And it was a really difficult thing to do. So I found that virtually impossible. And then from there, I then learned transcendental meditation when I was probably about 20. And it was exactly the same thing. So it was really interesting, actually. That was quite a profound experience because it was a traditional ceremony, which was amazing. And I loved it. Like they do the chants and everything. And so the mantra that they gave me was Ram. So you're supposed to, you start by, you repeat it out loud. So it's like Ram, 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 Ram. And then he says, right, stop and repeat it in your mind. So for 15 minutes, I sat there and I was supposed to be listening to this Ram, Ram, Ram in my mind. And like my thoughts were here. Like there's a guy sat there, like, what is he thinking? What am I looking at? And at the end of the 15 minutes, the guy goes, right, that's 15 minutes. And I was like, well, that like nothing can have happened in that meditation because my thoughts were all over the show. Like I was nowhere near hearing the mantra. And I got up and walked out, and it was a sunny day, and I walked out of the building and I felt like I'd been reborn. Like I could see all different colors. It felt really different. And I was so shocked because, as I say, I wasn't attentive at all. But there's obviously a power in the words. There's an energy in the words. And that energy impacts you even if you don't hear it.
Ram that's grounding, isn't it? That's sort of one of the lower chakras?
Yeah.
We're going to get a bit complex.
Yeah. I don't know why they gave me that mantra. But I did that for probably about 20 years, maybe 15 years, 15, 20 every day.
And that more than the following your breath?
Yeah. I couldn't do following your breath. I can do it now, but I couldn't then at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've really struggled with mantra meditation. My wife took to it like a duck to water, like head on the ceiling, body disappearing. I'd get my hands open if I was lucky. So I just keep coming back to the breath. Okay, but let's talk then about football a bit, because so obviously your dad was, played for Man City, manager, worked alongside Joe Royle, who I bumped into on a night out in Wimbledon Village when I was about 16, my first
really
a drunken night out. What a lovely guy. Great
yeah,
job.
he's amazing.
A really cool character. And but so you wanted to follow him, right? And then but you realised that actually your path was better suited not necessarily on the pitch.
Well, I wouldn't say that, no. Basically, like that was all I ever wanted to do. And like I say it to my kids now, when I was a kid, all I ever did was kick a ball against the wall, and they don't believe me, but it's honestly true. It's so true. Like I did it all day, every day. I just loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
So then I was actually a late developer. So in the early years, I didn't get picked up by academies or anything, but I kept going because my dad was at a club. So I'd go and I'd train with him. And then when I was about 19, I actually grew and got strong. So then I signed a professional contract, and then I dislocated one ankle, broke my other ankle. And after the second injury, I knew that was it. And I spent a day crying in bed. And I knew that was the end of that big dream. And I had no idea what I would do or what I wanted to do.
So how did you decide to, go on the path that you've subsequently forged?
So I went to do a degree in physio because I didn't know what else to do. And it was the only thing at the time that you could study that was related to football. So I did that and then kind of started working as a physio a bit. But I never, ever, I never felt like that was my identity as a physio. Never. Even doing the course, I can remember I'd do the minimal possible, and I wasn't interested in the body really, which I am now more so. But not in just like the muscles and like it doesn't interest me, never did.
Right. And you're now a coach and you work with high achievers and people generally and do a lot of energy work and therapeutic work and all this stuff, and you got qualification through the Tavistock. So how did that shift from physio into more of the holistic and well-being space take place?
So obviously there was my dad and the like the meditation side, and then when I was doing my physio degree, I found it really difficult because half of the time was in hospital. I'd never been in hospital before, and my first ever placement, it was 6 weeks in intensive care.
Wow!
So I had to go in every day in intensive care, put a tube down people who are asleep's throat, get all the crap off their lungs, and then leave. I had to go running every lunchtime just to get through it. It was like really difficult.
How's that impacted you in terms of being that close to that level of suffering and death?
Yeah, it's probably the best experience of my life, to be honest. Because I'll never forget. So that first placement, this was 30 years ago. I went in and there was a young man in the middle bed, and he was, I think, about 25, and he'd crashed in his Ferrari on the motorway at 110 miles an hour. And he was unconscious and he'd lost both his legs. He hadn't woken up yet. So he was about to wake up and realise that he had no legs.
Gosh.
So that was one memory from that time which had a profound impact on me. But also I worked at Christie's, which is the cancer hospital. And yeah, that had a huge impact as well. There was one woman. She was old, but she knew she was dying, and I was working with my friend actually, and we went to her this morning, and she said, "I just want to dance one more time before I die." So we danced with her on the ward, and she died that afternoon.
Wow. Gosh, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Goodness me. Yeah, death is really out of sight, out of mind in this country.
Yeah.
Until it's not.
Yeah. Let me tell you about one of my clients who recently died. And it's related because she was at Christie's. So she was this amazing businesswoman, and she worked her whole life to create this business. And her dream was when she sold her business, her dream was to go and travel around the world. And towards the end of her business, she was feeling slightly unwell and tired. So she went to the doctor. The doctor said, "You're fine. Don't worry, don't worry." And then when I met her, which was about a year ago, the day she sold her business, she got a terminal cancer diagnosis. Wow. And she lived about a year from that point. But what happened with her, so I was working with her, and she was still amazing. She was vital. She was funny. She was hilarious. And like, it was hopeful that she might live longer. And then I hadn't seen her for a while. But last time I saw her, she'd just been to the gym. She came into my office. She was full of life. And she texts me and she says, "Oh, you need to come and see me." And I said, "Okay, yeah, no problem." She said, I'm in Christie's in the hospital. So I went to the hospital, and I was expecting her to meet me at the door at the ward, and she didn't. And when she didn't meet me there, I was a bit like, what's going on here? But I had no idea what I was going to find in the room. So I went into the room, and her husband was there, who I didn't know that well. And I saw her, and she was a bag of bones. 6 weeks earlier, she was completely vital, and she was this bag of bones. And I wasn't sure whether she knew she was dying in that moment or not, but I kind of assumed that she did. And yeah.
Wow.
And she died the next morning.
Goodness. So there's that Stoic saying, memento mori, and as I said, it's so out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
We tend to believe we're going to go on for at least another 20, at least another 30 or whatever. You never know when you're going to get the tap on the shoulder, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to you earlier about currently having a baby and walking with her to sleep.
Yeah.
And the beauty of meditation, and the whole point of it really is to go deep. It's not about a trophy or getting somewhere, although you can get somewhere, as we've discussed, and we'll talk about more. It's about going more deeply into the moment. And I've heard you talk about that. Did those experiences, has that stayed with you in terms of gratitude for, the miraculous nature of any moment? Like right now, we're sat in my studio.
Yes.
You've got a I don't know, big plant next to you. I think that's the word for it. And we're here. And even just, let me tell you a quick experience I had. Recently, I was going to Manchester. And
you didn't give me a call, did you?
I didn't know you lived there, Dan. So you're always on the road. And I was waiting on where the train announcement, the platform announcement is going to be. And you could see everyone was tense and just in a rush. Hurry up and tell me what platform my train's going to be on, right? Because this moment is just an important stepping stone to that moment to get on the train. And obviously being on a train is just a stepping stone to get to the more important moment, which is arriving, and so on and so forth. And that's how we live our lives. Yeah. And I was looking around, and I used to travel a lot with my job at Radio 1, and it changed a lot. The boards had changed, everything had changed. And I was looking there, and there were cameras in the corners, and there were birds swooping down. And it was just this amazing scene of life. And it's so easy to become ambivalent or overlook actually what a miraculous scene that is. Yeah. And I think this is the beauty of what we're really pointing to here is actually, that piece that you talk about that's underneath everything, or getting this appreciation of life itself. Every moment is utterly miraculous. Just the fact, for example, there is something rather than nothing. Yeah. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah. So the work that I do now, part of the reason that I chose to do it is because the main focus of the work is just to be present. So I wanted to do something that would make it easier for me to be present, because I'm a bit of a dunce. But because of that, like it becomes a natural habit, and then you become more and more present. And when you are present, like in this moment, like you say, that it's an absolute miracle that we're sat here, that we've met, that there's 8 billion people on the planet, and we're here talking in this moment. And it's the same in all of the sessions that I have. It's exactly the same. So I'm fortunate that my work, it's a good reminder of how grateful I am.
Yeah. That's what I love about podcasting, actually. It's just these kind of conversations, they draw you deep, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's such a gift just on that level. Okay, let's go back to football quickly. So obviously, you know, you had a very successful career, but you left Everton 3-4 years ago?
3 years ago, yeah.
And I saw a post you put out and you felt somewhat liberated by that, leaving football. And you did also put a post out on LinkedIn about that a lot of people are getting disillusioned with football at the moment.
Yeah.
Players, you know, I know supporters are, you know, a lot of them getting priced out. What do you think's going on there?
It's a difficult one because there's many things going on. But when I started working in football, so as a physio, there was a real sense of togetherness. And many of the players who I worked with then, I'm still very good friends with. And that was 20, 30 years ago. Whereas things have changed in many different ways. And part of it was fewer staff. So the players relied on you more, you were closer to them. And the players kind of trusted the staff and you felt together as one. Whereas now, most Premier League players have their own team of people around them. And it's become much more individualised. And I feel like that has happened because they've not got that sense of togetherness anymore at the club. So they need to create it outside. And then on top of that, obviously, you've got the ownership that has changed in every club. Because when I started at Everton, it was Bill Kenwright who was the owner. And he wasn't like a billionaire. And he loved Everton and he'd do anything for Everton. And when you've got an owner like that, it has a different feel, doesn't it?
Of course.
And every club in the Premier League has changed in that way.
Yeah, because it all comes down from the top. There's that Italian saying, if you want to know if a fish is rotten, smell the head. Now, I'm not saying they're all rotten, but it's very true. It does come down from the top, right?
Yes.
Yeah, obviously there's a huge amount of money. I mean, obscene amounts of money really now.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of toxic tribalism. I've often thought that there's a bit of that in football. But you feel liberated having kind of come away from that to some degree. I know you still do. You did stuff for FIFA and Adidas recently.
Yeah, and I feel very fortunate because I still work with players, a lot of top players. So I feel like I've got contact with the game because I still do love football. I love watching my players play and I feel very invested in them. But I was actually thinking about my life in football on my way here. And, you know, when you work in football, I always felt like there was a lot of dead time. Like there's a lot of time where you're just sitting around doing nothing. Like when the team travels, you're sitting around doing nothing. You're doing nothing in the hotel. Whereas now my work is completely different. It's very intense. And I feel like I'm of more use doing what I do now, even though at that time, you know, we've spoken about the impact that I had with players, you know, teaching them different things and stuff like that. Yeah, it just feels a better fit now. And I don't think it's only football. I think a lot of people in organisations generally now are finding it more difficult because they've not got the cultures that they used to have. And it's only a very select few that manage to create a very special culture and that attracts people.
Yes, that sense of we, not me. That sense of being part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yes.
And that's the beautiful thing, I think, about sport. I touched on in terms of my realisation with the spiritual aspect of sport, for example, losing ourselves in the moment. So in flow, whether you're watching or playing, losing ourselves in the moment. But there's also the more simple thing of losing ourselves within a team.
Yes.
Serving a cause bigger than ourselves. And, you know, that is beautiful.
Yes.
If I think of the teams I've played in when I was younger, rugby, football, it was the ones where there was that togetherness. It's magical. You can really rise to different levels. And we are seeing that fragment in sport, in football, in work. It's becoming atomized. It's becoming breaking down. And we need to get that back up big time.
Yeah, when you say that, you make me think about, I worked with the England under-21s. It was a couple of years ago in the summer, and they won the under-21s or 23s Euros. And they'd grown up together, that team, since they were like under-14s with the England, and there was a great pathway. And they were the most connected team I've ever felt, and a lot of that was with Lee Carsley. But I in terms of the flow thing, I asked them all, what are you thinking when you're at your best? And Eve, like, all of them know when you're at your best, you're not thinking anything.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Because you're in flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, right? That reminds me. So I looked on your website. You've got this cute picture of you as a little boy with a trophy.
Yeah.
And you said even at that age, you intuited that the trophy was not what it was about and winning was not what it was about.
Yeah.
And so this was kind of, when I launched Don't Tell Me the Score on the BBC in 2018, Sport as Metaphor for Life, and then wrote this book here, Champion Thinking. I didn't choose the name. And and eventually arrived, and basically if I had to summarise it, at least to some degree, it's not, sport is not about the trophy. We're told time and time again, it's about winning, it's about the trophies. You hear it on the Match of the Day sofa all the time. It's about how many trophies you've got, blah, blah, blah. But it's not about that. And also I think that's then become into life. It's about your success, it's about your accumulation, it's approval, etc., etc. But no, sport, for me, and I see this very clearly, it is in those moments of when we lose ourselves. And so it's not a coincidence that, you perform at your best in flow, like you say, when you're not thinking. And when you're not thinking, that means you've got not thinking about the past, there's no memory, so there's no identity. You're not thinking about the future, so there's no time.
Yeah.
You are the moment in that. And we love that. And that's not a coincidence. So it's a portal into the present. And then the mind comes online and goes, oh, no, it's about the trophy. And I feel very similar to you. Like winning's never been the big thing for me.
Yeah.
I'm not a hugely competitive person. I'm certainly not a hugely tribal person. But that losing yourself, there's nothing better than that.
I am very competitive, by the way. And my dad is the second most competitive person I've ever met. Really? John Terry is the most competitive.
Funny.
Yeah. But yeah, you just reminded me of when I started working at Everton. At that time, I just kind of started my own yoga practice.
Right.
So the players were watching me do it and they wanted to join in. And so I started teaching them. And there was one player who's a very good friend now, and he asked me, why do you do this? Why do you do this yoga? So I said to him that it's about bringing your presence into your body, into the present moment. And the postures are opening up energy centers to make you more present. So I said to him, it's not just about when you're doing these postures, it's about when you're in training, it's about when you're in the game. So I said, right, over the weekend, I want you to notice when you're present, when you're not present. So we played at home on the Saturday. It was at Goodison Park. And he came in on Monday. He was like, I can't believe it. I was like, what? He said he was a midfielder and he was dribbling. So he had the ball. He was dribbling on the ball in front of 50,000 people. And as he was dribbling, he was thinking about what he was going to have at McDonald's after the game. And he'd never noticed that before. And this is something that happens a lot when people begin to meditate and begin to be more present. They see for the first time how active the mind is. And it can feel like you're doing it wrong or you're thinking more. But that's just the first initial step.
Absolutely. Right. We'll come back to that because I really want to dig into the nuts and bolts of it. But so just describe the work you do with clients now, and also that you were doing, at the football clubs as well. You talked about, you see it as being present, but there's an element of counselling, there's an element of coaching. How would you describe it?
Let me just tell you about one experience that I had that moved me from physio more into where I am now. So there was a French osteopath that came into Everton, and this happens a lot in football clubs. So people come in, like if there's a French player at the club, they want their own guy who's an osteopath, and it causes a lot of problems. But this guy, he did something called cranial osteopathy, and he'd touch the players' heads with this light touch, and the players were all like, "Oh, this is amazing! I love it." But I was curious, so I was like, "Right, okay, I'm going to learn this." So I went to this course. It was in America, 4-day course, And physio is pseudo-scientific, so it tells you that you need to have best evidence and all that, when in reality there's not a lot of evidence. It's a load of bullshit. But I was still in that mind frame of, right, it has to be evidence-based and all that. So they said, right, just feel the skull and feel it move. And I was like, the skull doesn't move. Like, I don't feel anything. But gradually, towards the end of the 4 days, I could eventually start to feel like this subtle thing. I didn't know whether it was right or wrong or whatever. But I then went back to Everton. So when you do this course, you're in a room of about 100 people. They're working on each other on these beds, and they're having these like amazing experiences. All this stuff's coming out of the unconscious. But I'm just there thinking they're a bunch of nutcases. Like, this isn't real. They're just nutcases. So I go back to Everton and I say to players, I'm learning this thing. Let me just try on you and see what happens. And the same things that were happening in those rooms was happening with the players.
Wow.
And I'm always very aware not to kind of suggest things to people. So I wouldn't say anything. I'd just say, let me just try this and see what happens. And like the most profound things were happening. Like the first one that comes into my head was, he wasn't actually a player, this guy. He was a masseur. And he got this vision, and it was these curtains that had stripes on them, and there was a heart kind of drawn on the curtains. And he was like, what does this mean? I was like, I don't know. You tell me. And then that night at 9 o'clock, he called me and he said, you're not going to believe this. I got a call at 5 o'clock saying, your dad's in hospital. He's had a heart attack. And he walked into the room and there's these curtains.
Gosh.
And the same thing was happening with players. My wife was a great help. She was amazing, so open. And yeah, so that kind of got me more in tune with the unconscious and the power that the unconscious has over us. So in terms of my work today, it's kind of hard to describe, hard to put into words.
Opening up to that in various ways.
Yeah.
Opening up and seeing what happens.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you said about evidence-based stuff.
Yeah.
Because we're in such a culture where that's such a thing, right?
Yeah.
And I totally understand that. But I think once you start to experience some of these things, then you quickly see the limits of that. Like, for example, I've done some Qigong in my time, and you can do the most like nothingy movements, or seems like nothing. And I've done some stimulating stuff stupidly before bed, and just being like, oh my God, I feel as big as the room afterwards. Yeah. And my wife she's a Reiki master, and goodness me, some of the experiences I've had with her, I've told you about them.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful. And then someone else I know does yoga, but not, as she says, the bendy gymnastics type. Very subtle movements, and some of the experiences people have in that. Yeah. I mean, once you start touching into this sort of the energetic stuff, yeah. I mean, it's really, really, it's a incredibly deep mystery.
Yeah, and it always will be, and that's the beauty of it. And there's no way that science can find out what that is, because it's beyond the tools that measure these things.
Yeah, and there's the observer, right?
Yeah.
That's the key thing. I don't think people don't realise about science.
Yeah.
Everything about science is objective. Yes. There's a subject studying an object.
Yes.
What about the subject?
Exactly.
Right. That's tell me about, which comes back to your self-inquiry question. What is that?
Yes.
Right. That's that unchanging element.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about embodiism. Right. So your company, Embodiism, great name. And I love the fact that on your website that, the body bit is highlighted. Yeah. Because, we do spend a lot of time in our heads, right? Mm-hmm. Like I really learnt this, I'm sure it was a fear response coming out of intense feelings in my body, up into my head, wanting to think my way out of them. And that became a deep groove. And then I learnt gradually about coming back into the body. And it's still a very big work in progress. But I think that's so important, isn't it? And you really emphasize that, is when we have, for example, a difficult feeling during an important moment, which is kind of inevitable when we're showing up to, whether it be a speech or a football match or whatever it might be, you're going to feel those feelings. And the temptation is to come away from them. But actually, it's about going towards them. And then the other insight I just add, and I'm sorry to use all your material straight away like this, but is that
you know it better than me.
is the mind by its very nature is in time. Thought you can't think about this moment because as soon as you do, you've missed it, right? It's in the past and the future. The body is now.
Yes.
And so can you just speak about like the importance of being in the body and the embodiism, the essence of that?
Yeah, I think so with like sometimes with footballers that I work with, I'll get them to close their eyes and I'll just say, right, where is your attention? What do you notice? And they'll be like, I feel my ankle or I feel my heartbeat or something like that, as if like, what's the point? But like going back to my experience in Amsterdam, the body was the vehicle that allowed me to experience what I experienced. And there's an energetic presence that lives in the body. And the only way to get there is by being in the body, inhabiting the body. And there's a peace that comes when you do that. And it's so simple that most people miss it. And like every single client that I see claims that they're the biggest overthinker that's ever existed. Because it's a practice, it's a habit, like you say, going round and round and circling in the mind. When it's so simple just to simply come into the body and presence yourself in the body. And I get people who have never meditated before and I get them just to close their eyes and notice whatever they notice. And most of them have quite deep experiences very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You told me about a few of them. And yeah, it is easy, as you say, but it can be hard as well because that compulsion to move away. Like I've noticed is sometimes in myself, if I have an anxiety or something, I know now the importance of moving towards it. But you can still move towards it with a subtle agenda to want to get rid of it. Yeah, you know, it can be challenging.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, isn't it? But I think the key to that is that you make it a habit that you do all the time. And then if you've got a very strong grounded feeling in living in your body, then when the more challenging feelings come in, you've got that underlying presence that can just be with it. So it's not just when the difficult things come you practice. You always practice.
So how would you practice that? Just take your attention into the inner energy field of the body, as Eckhart Tolle would say, something yoga nidra. Like, what would you suggest?
But like before Amsterdam, for me, I wouldn't have even known what the energy field was. So that, you know, I like to speak in very practical terms. So I would just say, bring your attention into the body. So one of my teachers who we spoke about, Russell Williams, who was an incredible guy, he would always talk about the hands. And he would always say, when you're washing up, when you're doing the dishwashing, pay attention to the hands. Just watch the hands and be with the hands. And at the time, I didn't really know what he was on about, but I would practice. And the hands have got a lot bigger innovation than other areas of your body. So when you pay attention to them, something happens in your brain. I don't want to go into too much detail, but if you can just pay more and more attention to the hands, feet are another area, and also the head, you will transform. And the energy thing is something that comes when you do that consistently.
I used to have something called a motivator, which it's a great little tool, and I would love to make a cheaper one for Amazon or something, because I'd make a fortune. But it basically, it's like a buzzer, and you set it for, say, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, however you long, and it will just do a gentle buzz in your pocket. And the whole point is, it's actually for kids to train them, for example, to sit still or whatever, or check in. But I was using it to try it to come into my body. And then I would set it, say, for 5-10 minutes, and I would try and then stay in my body, centered in my body, until the next time until the next time it buzzed. And I don't think I ever achieved it.
I did a similar thing. So I didn't have a motivator. But I decided, right, I want to pick one task, and I get my clients to do this quite a lot. So I'll say, right, what is one thing in your day that you do every day that you can really just have the intention, because intention is very important, to be present and pay attention. And for me, I was working at Everton at the time. So it was about a 45-minute drive there, 45-minute drive back. So I was like, right, I'm going to practice this in the car. So like you say, the first day, was like 10 seconds I was present, and then go away, come back, go away, come back. And over time, it just got better and better and better. And when you train attention in that way, awareness in that way, it just gets finer and finer and deeper. And then what happens is every time that you get in the car, because of the association, it just happens. If you do it consistently, but you've got to have a strong motivation and a strong intention. So there's got to be a real driving reason why you want to do this, because any change isn't easy. So I always try and help people find something that makes it mean something more to them.
Well, is there a trend for that why?
Well, usually it's pain. And I don't mean physical pain, I mean emotional pain.
Suffering. So as in want to get to grips with it. I'm tired of being with
suffering.
This.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Okay. Earlier we spoke about, or you spoke about, there's the meditation, but then there's being present. That the rest of the time. That's what you're talking about here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the simple way: come into your body, come into your hands, come into your feet.
Yes.
Do it at certain times, associate it with certain activities until it becomes habitual.
Yes. But I wouldn't even suggest to people, like the hands and feet are more sensitive. So sometimes I'll direct them to those because it's easier. But usually I don't even direct them. I allow their awareness to go wherever it goes. So I'll get them to usually close their eyes, because a big part of the way we experience the world is visual.
Yeah.
So shut that off, quietens the brain down immediately. And then I'll just say, right, what do you notice? And when they notice something, so we can do it now in this moment. Like you don't have to. We're already doing it. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And the listener, even speaking about this, there's an unconscious movement towards it. So if whoever's listening, if you just notice what you're noticing now in your body, and then I get them to just stay there, whatever it is, wherever it is, and just be with it, and then follow it. And it will change and things will happen, but just stay with it and follow it, and it goes deeper and deeper. And like I say, people who have never meditated before can do that. Anyone can do that. But it's so simple.
Yeah. A quote of a guest of mine that I quite like is, the antidote is in the poison. So the anxiety or the intense sensation that we want to get away from, actually when you really go into it, like, what is this? Take the storyline away. Okay, how do I even know it's anxiety?
Yeah.
There's an energy, there's an intensity to it, sure.
Yeah.
You go deeper and deeper into it, and it can transmute.
Yes.
I remember London 2012, I had this sensation arise in my stomach that I thought was anxiety, wanted to get rid of it. So I went up into my head, catastrophic thoughts, nearly ran away, got through it. A few years later, when I was more familiar with this stuff, and particularly through acceptance and commitment therapy, I was doing a TV interview. I was in the wings, and the same feeling came up. This time went towards it with a curiosity and an interest in this. What is this? Oh, you're welcome. Bang, changed. Changed from anxiety to excitement.
Yeah.
And it becomes like this beautiful energy, right?
Yeah.
And that's the power of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think anxiety is an overused word.
Right.
And as we said earlier, every word has energy. And a lot of people have feelings and automatically they label it anxiety. And it's actually a completely different feeling from what they were feeling yesterday, and that was anxiety. It's not the same thing. So exactly what you're saying, just be with it more deeply and experience it and know it. And I think it was a psychologist called Beiser, and he spoke about the paradoxical theory of change. And that is that if you want something to change, you have no intention to change. And just be with it fully.
Yeah. Accept yourself fully, and then you can change something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Let's hop back onto meditation, but I want to start with digital distractions, because I read a post that had an interview with your dad, and he was talking about how young people's particulars, minds are scrambled because we have all these distractions. Now, you're a prolific poster on LinkedIn and a very good one as well. And, you write some great stuff, but I'm interested how you manage this, because I still struggle with this, because I'm theoretically have to post on various platforms because of the podcast, whatever. But I find it sort of pulls me in, and it's the antithesis really of meditation, because meditation that we'll get onto, it's about getting that one-pointed focus, and the deeper you can go into that, like really quite miraculous things can happen. But then we are training ourselves to be distracted, and I just think it's pretty scary. Over here, if you look over my shoulder, I've got a phone lock case, which
I wondered what that was.
Yeah, okay.
I've not got one.
Highly recommended. Just I find if I stick it in, lock it for a few hours, it actually comes as a huge relief. And I'm actually getting a dumb phone for my birthday soon.
Yeah.
I'll keep my smartphone, for work purposes a couple of hours in the day, but I want to get back to phone calls, text.
Yeah.
Because I find it distracting.
Yeah.
In terms of focus, meditation, and then also flow following focus, what's your take on, digital distractions and the part they play now?
Yeah, I will answer that. But you said about one-pointed attention and one-pointed focus. That is one part of meditation, but the other part is completely open focus and attention. And I feel like meditation is both. Well, you're exactly right. What can I add? But my own experience is that I had to do LinkedIn initially. Someone actually challenged me to do it, because when I left Everton, my intention was, I want to be able to create a life where I don't have to go back into football. And so the choice is always mine. So that was a very strong motivator, desire. And a guy said to me, if you want to do that, you have to have a social footprint. So he challenged me to do post on LinkedIn every day for a month. It was a nightmare, honestly. Honestly, it was so difficult. But I accepted the challenge and I did it. And then I got to the end of the month and I was like, oh, thank God for that. And I said to my wife, thank God for that. I'm never doing it again. And a couple of people called me and got in touch with me and said, oh, you're doing really well, aren't you? I was like, what? What do you mean? And they're like, oh, I see all your stuff on LinkedIn. You're doing really well. I was like, what? I wasn't saying anything about how I was doing or anything. Yeah. So my wife said, oh yeah, you should carry on for a bit. I was like, okay, I will. Then it was still really difficult for a while. And now my experience of LinkedIn is not like that. Now, if I have something that I want to say, have a feeling, I'll write it down in 5 minutes and put it out there. And it doesn't draw me in. The phone does draw me in, but LinkedIn, I've got a good relationship with that, healthy relationship. I do think our kids, it's very difficult because there's distraction everywhere, and the phones are designed, aren't they, to distract your mind.
I mean, literally, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, by infinite scroll. And
by the greatest minds in the world who understand addiction better than anyone.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And they're
using mechanisms of gambling and everything like that.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm going back to a dumb phone.
Yeah, it's difficult though, because I've spoken to my wife about getting a dumb phone, but it's really difficult. I came down here on the train today. How would I do that? I don't even know how I'd do that now. Is it possible?
But do you know what? I'm thankful. I'm such a Luddite that I still use cards and
do you?
Oh yeah, I will go for paper cards all day long. So I'm hopeful that there will still be. Look, they've got to cater for 90-year-olds. So
yeah, but I don't know.
Fit in
I don't
graphic.
know if they do though, because I go to restaurants now and they say we don't take cash. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Can you say that? Really? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't need to go full cash, but yeah, carrying around a bag of pennies, but cards or whatever. But I do think it's really interesting what your dad said about people being scrambled or whatever, because focus it's so important, and it's not just kids. If I go to the train station and I walk and I always look down the platform, and 95% plus people are stuck in their phones, and this again comes back to that. Me, not we sense, the disconnection.
Yeah,
everyone's in their own little world. And
Yeah.
I sat at a restaurant, whatever, and there'll be 4 people all on their phones, and it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Not to say I don't sometimes fall for that, because I do, right?
Yeah.
It's so hard to resist.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience before the Euros a couple of years ago. We played France at Leicester, and France were the number 1 team in the world, and we beat them 4-0 or 4-1. And after the game, I came in the dressing room and there's 20 of the best young players in Britain, and you could hear a pin drop. every single one of them was on the phone. And I'd not experienced that before. And I was like, what the hell's going on here? And the reason was because we'd done so well, they wanted to see all the great stuff.
Of course. Yeah.
It's mad.
It is mad. And earlier we were speaking about the gratitude for any miraculous moment, right? And if I'm upstairs putting my daughter to sleep, for example, now that's not the most thrilling moment. It's not a dopamine moment, but it's coming back to experiencing and being grateful for the simplicity of a moment like that. But everything, it's very dopamine-y, right? And we get so, swept up in it. And it's very addictive. And like you say, I mean, to be in a room where you can hear a pin drop. I mean, it has to affect performance. I made an argument that in tennis, the reason the next gen didn't break the stranglehold of Rafa, Novak and Roger is because they were the first generation with smartphones. It had to have impacted them at least by point something percent, which is the difference at the top of pro sport.
Yeah. A lot of them have got more than one as well. Like most footballers have got 2 or 3 phones. Yeah. I actually got one of my players to get rid of one. So he had 3 and I said, right, you've got 1 month, you're going to get rid of 1 and make it 2. And then my next challenge is to get rid of the other and make it 1. So it was the end of the month and I said, right, now's the time. Go up and get the 3rd phone. So he brings it down. I got the SIM out, broke it into little pieces there and that was it. Because it definitely impacts performance. Because there's so many people now in the world that are suffering and suffering with mental health, suffering with anxiety, and they're not doing anything to try and help themselves. No.
It's hard though, right? In the way the system's set up. Because it's so culturally embedded. Yes. And I hope that, you see this movement towards smartphone-free childhood and perhaps the age limit. And I think that could be a real shift, because if the under-16s or under-18s are doing it less, then that'll drip feed into the adults. Yeah. I'm taking my stand with the dumb phone and this phone lock case behind me.
You put the petition out, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Signed it, yeah. Thanks.
Oh, no, my pleasure. I'm passionate about it, right? Like, I mean, we're becoming a sort of species of zombies, like dopamine chasing zombies, which means that you can't then struggle, you can't appreciate those moments. And I've noticed that sometimes even with my kids. I'll be there and the urge to reach the phone and check the news or check the social media, it's there. Yeah. And that is dopamine. Yeah. That's addiction. Yeah. Big stuff. Yeah. Right, anyway, right. The antidote or an antidote. Let's get on to the meditation, right? Okay. So you've talked about mantra, but I want to talk about, were you doing the meditation at the tip of your nose before Amsterdam or after?
Yeah, that was long before.
Right,
before.
Was that the thing, do you think, that to some degree propelled you towards that? Because the only other person I know, well, one of the other people I know who've experienced a jhana, whatever you want to call it, an awakening like yours, came through exactly the same method of that one focused, and I know there is more than that, but that one focused, real focus on the breath coming in at just at those nasal hairs at the tip of your nose.
Yeah, that's not for me, no. I don't know. Like, I only did that for a short period of time because I was so bad at it. For me, I think I did yoga every day for 2 hours for about 20 years. Wow. I'd get up at 5 a.m. and do it for 2 hours.
Wow. What time did you get out of bed?
Used to be about 10.
Blimey.
But I think that had quite a profound effect because
your body.
Yes. It's really getting you in the body. But the type of yoga that I used to do is called Ashtanga, right. Which is a dynamic yoga, which was great for me because I was a former athlete. But the every movement, every posture, you do something called Ujjayi breath. Do you know what that is? So you kind of block from the back of your throat. It's like Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. It's like this. It's like.
That's cool.
And it's the most calming thing that you can do. And for a lot of people who haven't meditated before, I get them to do that and it changes their state very quickly.
What's it
called? Ujjayi breath.
How do you spell that?
Ujjayi. And that means victorious.
Both of us.
It means victorious. Victorious over the ego.
Right.
But with the Ashtanga yoga, you're doing a lot of dynamic movements with the Ujjayi breath. And the Ujjayi breath, because it lengthens the breath, it slows everything down, and it gets you into the
rest and digest.
Parasympathetic.
Yeah,
I always get confused. Parasympathetic. Yeah. Where was I? What was the question?
I was talking about the point, but no, but that yoga stuff's really valid. Just quickly, Gary Webber, who's another guy who's had a similar experience to you, and he did it through self-inquiry. Yeah. So who am I? What am I? Where am I? When am I? And he was in a yoga pose. He went down into a yoga pose. He'd done it for 20 years. Came out, boom, nothing in his head. Yeah. And he said, I've got to go to work. God. And no one realised. And he was way more effective than ever. But that's really interesting. The body work's a fundamental part.
Yes. And I remember when I started doing Ashtanga, I used to go with my wife, and we'd go to this class on a Monday, and the teacher was pretty full on. So you'd do these intense postures, and he'd help you get into them. And then every time in the car going home, we'd argue like cat and dog. Really? There was something that came up, from that opening. There was some kind of emotional response, and we'd fight, and we never fight. So it was definitely something to do with the yoga.
Were you aware of that in the moment, or did you just go with it?
Yeah, we fought. Yeah, but we were aware of it in the moment. But I went to India many times. I've been to India probably 20 times. But I used to go and study with the founder of Ashtanga Yoga. He was called Patabi Joyce. I think being there and experiencing that had a profound effect as well.
And you said that when you went to India, you had this sense of having been there before.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and when I was 10, Gandhi's film was out of the cinema. Yes. And I'll never forget it. I cried and cried and cried.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. And this is a bit mad. I know it's mad, and my wife thinks I'm mad anyway. But when that obviously had a profound impact on me, that film. But then when I was older, I got this book, and it's images of Gandhi, with different people, and there was certain pages I would open, and I got a very strong feeling.
Wow. Yeah, that's super interesting. Is your wife as open to this stuff as you?
She's different. Like I say, in India they say if the man does the work, I mean it's very sexist, I know, but if the man does the work, the woman is carried along. But she's more kind of nurturing, and she's very intuitive in a different way. She doesn't meditate or anything like that, but I would say she was very connected. Yeah.
And is she open though? Do you talk to her?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, she's amazing.
Right. She's not skeptical about it or anything like that.
When I was learning the cranial osteopathy, she was a great teacher for me, because she would go into very deep states, and she would have some sort of contact with something other than her, and in the end, whatever that was said that we needed to stop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because of our relationship, we needed to stop. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I've said to you, my wife is Reiki master, astral projector. I hope I'm not going to get in trouble for this. And very...
You can always cut it out.
Very powerful. And I think being with... I'm more the head, I would say, to a degree. Yeah. And she's the heart of it. And I think having that kind of relationship, it's really powerful, right? Yeah. It gives a whole different dimension to relationships.
Yeah.
But okay, back to the meditation. So the focusing on the sensations on the tip of your nose, right? You said earlier, I mean, it seems simple, but it's so hard. Yeah. And as you said, you couldn't focus for, a split second. And I noticed that. You might think, Yuan, you can have a vague sense of the feeling, right? And I'm aware of that. And I can stay with that for a few breaths, but we're talking here full... you are dialed in. Yeah. Right? Some people say it take them years to just get one. And actually, because I still count sometimes, not always, but sometimes when I do this. But I don't even bother counting to 10. I just do one, just to try and get one. And you mentioned intention earlier, like the intention you set. And I've got a book I wanted to show it to you. Actually, it's this huge book about meditation, and it talks about the importance of setting an intention, because if you think about the way they described it was like this: when we're kids and we learn to catch, we set the intention to catch. We don't think, okay, I need to move this muscle and God, my arm's not going in the right place. Move properly, arm.
Yeah.
But we tend to do that with the mind. No, you set the intention to catch, and then over time, the brain or whatever it is learns to catch.
Yes.
We don't know how that happens, but that's what happens,
Yes.
right? And it's the same thing with meditation.
Yes.
Yes. So that intention is key.
Yes. And I also I think about the teacher Russell Williams, and he would always speak about how you just need to be very gentle and soft. So when you say intention, I think about this fiery intention where you're very focused. But it's the same in sport. If you're slightly trying too much and you're not in flow, then you're off, and you can be way off. And Anna Ivanovic, who we spoke about, she speaks about that in her career. It's just a slight shift in tension too much and you're off. So the intention is very important, but then it's kind of having that intention and then kind of letting go in a soft way and just allowing that intention. And I don't know if you've read Timothy Galway's books about the inner game of tennis.
Yes.
That's what that's all about. He's amazing.
He never replies.
Really?
Yeah. Do you know him?
I don't know him, but I think I had contact with him. I'll try and get him.
Yeah, please. I'd love to get him.
He's amazing,
Yeah.
yeah. But his, I don't know what the first one was. Was it tennis?
He's in a game of tennis.
Tennis, yeah. And he kind of at the start, he thanks one of his Indian guru, doesn't he?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed that.
I don't know which one it was, but it was an Indian guru that taught him everything.
Okay.
And it's basically exactly what you're saying. Just bypassing the mind and allowing your body to do what it needs to do.
Yeah. Because that is the insight, isn't it? And that's one of the insights is, first of all, when we come and try and focus on the breath, as you said, you notice it's just ding, 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 ding. It's just bouncing around all over the shop.
Yeah.
And that can come as a real surprise.
Yeah.
And actually, the first time you might not even notice that because you're not that connected to it. And it seems like it gets louder before anything happens because you start to notice how busy it is.
Yeah.
And as and we think that mind is who we are.
Yeah.
But it's observing that and
yeah. I think, for beginners, that practice might not be suitable for all beginners because it's so kind of raw and open. Like a lot of beginners, they need something to focus the mind on rather than just this. So Ujjayi breath, for example, breath holds, something like that is easier to begin with because it changes your state and it makes you more focused. Whereas if you just sit there and observe the breath in its natural state, there's not a trend towards focus. But why? Do you know why it is here?
All I've heard is just that there's a lot of nerve endings here, so the sensitivity of it.
Well, yeah, I think there's a small chakra here.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and I felt that when whatever happened in Amsterdam. So now it's a lot more easy for me to do that. And sometimes when I close my eyes, the awareness goes there naturally. So there is an energy center there. It's not one of the main ones, but there is one there.
That's interesting. So in terms of beginners, like I mentioned to you, I don't know, 2018, I think it was, I did the mindfulness-based stress reduction course, John Kabat-Zinn's course, 6 week. No, it was 8 week, and it's the most studied mindfulness course.
Yeah.
And I was following it there, and they said, no, don't do that. Follow it down in your belly, because then you've got that distance from your mind, for starters, as overthinkers.
Yeah.
And that's because it's a bigger area, and it's the hara, right? So that's another energy center. Yeah. And that I find to be easier. And just counting with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. To settle things down.
I think at a certain point it will be easier here. Because it is there is an energy center here, and the energy center, it draws your attention in and it makes it deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that they say that this is further away from your mind, because where is your mind?
It's a good question. Yeah.
Because there's an assumption it's in the brain.
Isn't we? But we tend to feel the if you ask most people, right, to do a body scan, I remember this from this course, and someone was saying, I'm putting my attention on the breath, and then they sort of bent their head as if they were putting the attention down, but from the head to the foot. And we do tend to, if you ask most people where are they located and got them to it down, they would tend to be here just behind the forehead, I would say, or behind the eyes. That tends to be. Now, I know when you investigate that, it's not right? Like we don't feel the sensation of our foot behind our eyes, but that does seem, it's quite strong, I think.
Yeah. I do I've got very strong evidence that the mind isn't in the head.
Yeah, go on.
And well, I'm sure you've done it. Like even
No,
we were speaking about Rupert Sheldrake. He's done research on like phone calls. I can't remember exactly what they did, but they got people to phone someone, and the person would have to say who the person phoning them was, and they were like 75% accurate. Mm. So if my mind's in my head and your mind's in your head, how could that happen? Mm. It can't happen. Mm. And it seems to be happening to me more and more. I'll think about someone, I'll get a text from them the next second. Yeah. Happens all the time.
Yeah. I mean, serendipity, happy coincidences.
Yeah.
Another thing that I do experientially, you mentioned earlier about the visual sight. Now, the visual sight is the one that seems to partition things off into this and that.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to just one stream of experience. So if you shut your eyes and just notice, okay, if a thought comes up or a sensation in the body, is that in awareness? Yes, it is. Right?
So what happens for you now when you close your eyes? Where does your awareness go naturally?
The awareness. So that's an interesting one, right? I would say it's twofold. I do have a mild sense of localization, but really that's just associated with the visual sense. So even with my eyes shut now behind here, but at the same time, I'm very. So I have, not like you, but a slightly psychedelic experience. And I love walking through London and doing this, right? Is that I'm aware, I can sense everything is within awareness. So if I'm, for example, cradling my daughter to go to sleep, right? If I shut my eyes, or even if I keep them open, but particularly if I shut my eyes, and I'll notice a thought come up, and it seems localized in the head, right? But then I'll notice her breath. They're both arising within awareness.
Yeah.
And you take the sight out, then like right now I can hear the sound of my voice, but if you speak up, and it seems like there's an intention for me to speak or whatever, but if you speak up, it's still arising in the same space.
Yeah.
And you play around with that, and that's fun.
Yeah, exactly. You just reminded me of another experience I had with Sadhguru. We've not mentioned Sadhguru, have we?
No. Yeah.
Do you know much about him?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I took him into Everton, and that was a whole story. I'll tell you about that, but that isn't what I'm talking about now. So he has this course, and it's like the third course
engineering.
in his. Yeah, that's the first one.
Right.
Then there's a second one, and then I think it's the third one. I think it's called something Bhavana anyway. And he does it in May every year for 3 or 4 days. And basically you go there, and so it's in Tennessee. And I was there on my own. So I was driving through all these trees. You don't see anyone for miles and miles and miles. And then you see this little sign, Isha Foundation. You go down there, and then you park, and there's like hundreds of cars. And you're like, what the hell is this? So you walk through the trees, and you see this massive golden dome. And you go into the dome, and they say, right, you're here for 4 days. You need to give me your car keys, your passport, your phone. What else is there in your wallet? And I was a bit like, even though I know Sadhguru well, I was a bit like, I'm not sure about this. But I gave them anyway. And at the start of the course, he says, right, by 3 p.m. on Sunday, you're all going to be dead. And even though I know Sadhguru, I was a bit like, is this like the Jones Massacre or something? I'm like, oh my God, oh no. Yeah. But what he was saying was that the ego would be dead. And he like, you go through, I'm not going to talk about what it is, but you go through this process. And for the whole 2.5 days, I was thinking, I can't do it. Like, I'm trying, nothing's happened. Like, it's not going to work for me. And then you do this part of the process. And I sat by this woman, and suddenly, bam, the whole awareness of me completely went. And I felt like I was everything. And then that lasted for a day.
Wow.
And I left, and yeah, and so I saw Sadhguru after the course, and I was like, what? Like, that made me just want that more. Is that a good thing or not? And he said, yeah, like the whole purpose is to show you over the wall, show you, where you can get.
Give you a glimpse.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And that's the thing, once you get a glimpse, as we said earlier, you can't forget that.
Yeah.
And you can sort of stay, however loosely, in touch with that.
Yeah,
and
but the reason I thought about that was because you said the visual field. My eyes were open.
Yeah. Well, you can start doing it with the eyes, can't you?
Yeah.
Once you, I think once you experience it, it's just in terms of, is easier, I think, with sensation and with sound.
Yeah.
But then you can bring the visual field in and question, because we know we don't see things as they are.
Yeah.
You know, but I just think it's so interesting. If you do shut down the eyes, where's the separation? It's just not there.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting a bit deeper.
Yeah.
So yeah. But let's to talk about. So we talked about intention, and so being gentle with intention. Another tip, as it were, that I've heard to be very powerful is it can be quite easy to be quite frustrated when the mind wanders, and you noticed it's wandered, which it does, and it does, and it does.
Yes.
And if you can instead be grateful and thank the mind, or thank when you notice that your mind's gone, rather than being annoyed. So changing that a little bit, because one of my previous guests, quite a nice analogy, it's like getting annoyed when you're doing a bench press right at the top. Oh God, how did I get here again?
Yeah.
But actually, no, you want to be having those. So that's a win, not a defeat.
Yeah. I think Novak Djokovic spoke really well about this. I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
But he said, and all of the players I work with have seen this and love it, because like you say, a lot of people can get self-critical when they notice that they've gone off. So I always say to them, whenever you notice you've gone off, very, very gently, just bring yourself back. And then if you go off again, it's fine. Gently bring yourself back. But Novak said that it's not about being fully present in every moment. It's how quickly you can come back.
Yes.
How quickly you can come back. And all you can do is, as soon as you notice, then you've got the choice. Because before that moment, when you're lost in thought, you've not got the choice. So all you can do is, in those moments of choice, take that choice. And even if you don't, if you go off, you'll have another moment, and you keep choosing and choosing and choosing. And I think it's useful for people who, like my client I told you about, who has 1.2 million thoughts a day. I speak to him about the space between thoughts.
Yes.
And even if it's a fraction of a second between thoughts, then it's more peace, it's more of a pause. And between every action, between every thought, there's a pause. And if you can connect with that pause, then you're connected to the silence that is beneath all action. Yeah,
beautifully put. And that Djokovic interview where he said that as well, I think it was a brilliant interview, because it also, he said two things. First of all, he said that it was not a talent, his mental strength. It was something he learned primarily through conscious breathing, number one.
Yes.
And number two, the idea that you should be positive all the time. Because I think there's this thing that drives me crazy, positive thinking. And no, we're human beings. You're going to have these thoughts. And it's just about getting that distance and being able to observe them and not take them seriously, not take them to be who we are, not taking them to be factual. And once you start getting that bit of distance, you mentioned Michael Singer to me earlier, Surrender Experiment. He says the whole spiritual game is stretching that gap.
Yeah. You just reminded me, in the Euros, there was one player who I worked with very closely and still work with him now. And it was in after the final, he came to me and said, you'll like what happened. So I said, go on, what happened? So he said that at the start of the game, he got the ball, he ran down the wing, he crossed, and we nearly scored. And he said normally in the past, he would have kind of allowed that to go to his head and been thinking about it for minutes. But he was like, no, in the moment, let it go. The second action, he got the ball, he ran through, has a shot, hit the post. And again, it would have normally, but he's like, no, in the moment, let it go. The third moment, he falls over the ball. Spain get the ball, run down the pitch, nearly score. And obviously something like that is going to have a bigger impact on your mind. But because he'd been practicing, he could let it go. And he was man of the match and man of the tournament.
Wow.
So
that is amazing, isn't it?